This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose.
My life changed in an instant. At that time I was 17 weeks pregnant with our triplets and now a widow.
Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. Get ready to hear moments that will help you to see the world differently and inspire you to become the happiest, healthiest, and kindest version of you. In this deeply moving episode, I sit down with Ashleigh Conwell, whose story of loss, resilience, and rebirth will stay with you long after you listen. Ashleigh's world changed in an instant when she lost her husband, Matt, while pregnant with their triplets. What followed was a journey no one could prepare for, one that demanded unimaginable strength, surrender, and the courage to rebuild a life from the pieces of another. Through her own heartbreak, Ashleigh discovered a powerful mission to help others map the unseen load of grief and bring to light the invisible emotional work of healing. Her platform, Yellow Falcon, is a testament to love, legacy, and the ways we can move through grief rather than simply move on from it. In this conversation, we explore the truth of what happens when everything familiar disappears, how the body, mind, and spirit begin to reconcile unimaginable change, and how we can still find beauty, purpose, and connection on the other side of loss. There were so many moments in this conversation that have left a mark on me. Her story reminds us that even in the darkest moments, the human heart has an extraordinary capacity to love again, to lead again, and to find meaning in the unthinkable. I would love to hear your reflections on this episode, so join me on Instagram. And if you'd like to watch instead of listen, jump over to our YouTube channel. All the links are in the show notes. Ashleigh Conwell, welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I know as a solo mum of triplets, it would not have been an easy feat for you to get here today, so I appreciate it. How was your morning?
As per usual, it was hectic, getting dressed, morning routine, out the door, but we get it done.
Yeah.
All hands on deck with us.
Yeah, and one of your beautiful triplets has given you a toy to take with you on your trip up here to the Sunshine Coast, which is so cute.
So adorable. I love those little moments. It's just so innocent and beautiful. So nice start to the day to have a little companion in the car.
Oh, that's gorgeous. You are like a superwoman to me. I came across your story maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and I actually pressed play on a podcast episode that you were on. And I was dropping my girls off at soccer, and I usually drive home and then come back. But I found myself stuck in the car park listening to your story, and I was deeply emotively connected to your story and what you were saying, and I just knew I had to talk to you. I knew I had to bring you on to Things You Can't Unhear. And I just want to say you are the strongest woman I know.
Thank you.
And I'm privileged to be able to share your story and your mission here today.
Thank you so much.
So for everyone listening, we are buckle in because Ashleigh has had, we call them I call them life-defining moments. Our lives can sort of go on pathways and then something will happen, and that's a huge pathway to the next series of years for our lives. Do you want to talk us through your biggest life-defining moment and why you're on a new mission today?
Absolutely. So my journey really started in 2020. And when we hear that year, everyone just cringes.
We all do.
We know how heavy that year was, a lot of uncertainty in the world. And like I said, we all have a story from that year. And my story was certainly one that I never anticipated and never imagined would then become a truly life-defining year. So in January of 2020, I lost my father-in-law, who I adored, and that was due to a very short and aggressive illness. And then in March, I was stood down from my role at Flight Centre Travel Group due to COVID happening. And that was a role that I really loved. So obviously a big shock, and the travel industry was just truly decimated at that time. Then in June, my husband and I were actually really delighted. We had the best news to find out that we were pregnant. This was such a dream of ours, so something that we always had planned and hoped for, and so just truly, just so excited. So June, we finally had some good news in, such a heavy time. So it was only actually 3 weeks after that we found out we were having triplets. So it was such a whirlwind, elated to find out pregnant, and then a mix of both shock and also, honestly, so much more excitement to know that we would be welcoming 3. So that was June for us, so really exciting time. And then in August, we celebrated our wedding anniversary. And I didn't know it would be our last together. So it was the following week that Matt went out for his usual morning run, but he never returned home. So he was involved in an accident, and my life changed in an instant. At that time I was 17 weeks pregnant with our triplets and now a widow. So that was 2020, and just, like I said, the loss of my father-in-law, losing my job, losing my husband.
And also being pregnant to triplets.
Yeah, and being pregnant to triplets is a high-risk pregnancy, so there was a lot of additional monitoring, a lot of concern, and we were told it's unlikely you will meet all 3 babies. So I was carrying a pregnancy knowing that it was unlikely to carry all 3 to term. So that was in September of 2020, and then our babies arrived safely in early 2021, which was a huge relief. They were born preemie, which is guaranteed for triplets, so then it was time in the NICU, and 12 days later, my granddad passed away suddenly.
My goodness.
So he had a brain injury, and so I had then lost a third father figure within the space of a year.
Ashleigh, that is a lot to deal with, and when that happens to us in life, when we get these huge shocks, how did you find that the mind and the body reconciled that? Or did it take a long time for that to happen?
Yeah, it did. Each of those moments I had a different reaction to. Of course, the loss of my husband being kind of the most prominent and the most impact to my daily life, and not just my life, but our kids' lives. And, so huge readjustment and instant readjustment. Unlike maybe if you're navigating an illness with a loved one, you can kind of see a progress happening or a decline happening. This was instant. So the truth is, what actually happened in that moment is my body shut down. And this is where I've learnt the true meaning of survival mode. And we sort of throw that term around fairly loosely, but I've learnt and lived it. And so for me, what that meant was I didn't walk for 5 days because I actually didn't know how to. And I reflect back to that time thinking the overwhelming pain actually just completely numbed me out. Like, I didn't have the capacity to cope. I didn't have the capacity to feel anything but numbness. And so I physically couldn't walk. I was unable to eat or drink. So my family they couldn't even feed me because I wasn't able to even chew. Like, my body just completely shut down. So they were feeding me liquid meals through a straw. So that was my initial response, was a complete shutdown physically. Mentally and emotionally, I was just pretty offline, to be honest. And that took, time. And then that's when the emotion came, and that was just sort of unbelievable emotion. Confusion and processing all of those elements of grief simultaneously. And then it was in this parallel, though, of preparing for babies. So I actually had a bit of a scare at 20 weeks. So Matt's accident, I was 17 weeks pregnant. 3 weeks later, I'm trying to navigate everything. I've just sort of planned the service for Matt, and then 20 weeks had a bit of a scare. And it was at that point that the doctor said to me, just get to 24 weeks. We can work with 24 weeks. And so then I've had this moment of going, well, I've barely coped for the last 3 weeks, and now you're expecting me to do another 4. And it was at that moment that I felt, I don't know if I can do this. So navigating this intense grief, all of your hopes and dreams are out the window, and preparing for what will be absolutely a preemie birth at best is just so many emotions and conflicting emotions, really. And you're trying to be joyful. Everyone sort of tells you that you're pregnant, like what a wonderful thing, and it is. And you should feel joyful and you should feel grateful, and I wasn't able to feel that. I felt extreme fear through that.
How do we even begin to bring everyday life into our worlds when we're feeling these types of emotions, when we're feeling that depth of grief like you were, and you were navigating, I'm sure, so many things in your mind. You're about to birth babies. You're trying to stay well yourself. You're navigating the loss of your beautiful husband, Matt. You're thinking about financial obligations. Where does that all begin to sort of align and fit back into each other?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the finances, because that's such a pivotal point, because we need to pay the mortgage, we need to pay the bills,
Life
right?
continues, yeah.
Exactly. Life continues around us. And often in grief, I've always felt really stuck. I'm stuck in the loss and the grief, but life doesn't work like that. We need to keep showing up, not just for, like I said, paying the bills, but for, friends move on, work continues, etc. So I was really grateful that it must have been like maybe day 4 after losing Matt, and my parents came to me, and this is still at a point where I wasn't walking, wasn't talking. I was just completely consumed by the emotion. And my parents actually said to me, we're conscious that this is a really, private matter, like finances are private. However, do you have access to your bank accounts? Do you know what direct debits are coming out? Do you have enough money in your account to pay the mortgage? And for the first time in days, I sat up and I said to them, yes, I know everything. And I felt for the first time almost a sense of achievement and a sense of, okay, I can do this. And I know that they asked me cautiously and respectfully. And at the same time, I'm so grateful that they did, because I wasn't thinking about it. There were other things on my mind. And, they had this, because they were in the grief with me, but they also had this external view of, life continuing. They went, hang on, there are some practical steps that we need to support Ashleigh with. And so I feel always really grateful for that conversation. And I know that not every woman is in that position where they have access to the finances or have the visibility or the confidence. And I felt such a relief that I had that. And I was then able to go, yes, I've got the spreadsheet, because I love a spreadsheet. And I was able to then start applying some practical steps to ensure that I was going to be okay, and that I was okay for me now, but also for the kids.
Yeah, I think that's super important. And I know that you now have found a way to help other women in this situation. And I do want to talk about that soon. But before we jump into that, I want to know, do you feel Matt around you at the moment?
All the time. All the time.
What does that feel like?
It is so comforting and beautiful. And I almost feel it's frustrating, because it's an element of feeling so close yet so far. And I've always described it as being like a Venn diagram. Like Matt and my relationship was like a 90% overlap by choice. Did everything together, genuinely loved each other's company. And so to have that ripped away from you in a physical sense has been a lot of work that I've had to do. The woman that you see sitting here and that you hear with this confidence is far from what I was and what I've been through. And I've worked really hard to find myself again. I'm never the same person. But that's where I feel the most loss is, having that sort of 90% overlap. I didn't just lose myself in that. I lost Matt, I lost our relationship, and I lost me at the same time. So there's a lot of work to do through that process. But I definitely feel him, and it's important to the kids and I that he's super present in our life. Everyone navigates grief differently, and for us that is really important. And it allows the kids to have a relationship with him despite not being physically here. So that's how we navigate our grief.
I have interviewed a lot of psychics on my podcast, and I tend to interview them well. For some reason, I'm deeply curious about what happens when we pass. And I recently interviewed John Edward, who's many will know as a leading psychic, lives in America. And I asked him a question about what people who have passed need when they've passed. And he said it's on both sides of the veil, those who are still here and those who are gone. And what they deeply want is connection with each other.
Yeah.
And I love that you're still getting that connection with Matt.
It's something that I've definitely leaned into more in recent years. I've always believed in that. And for me, it is, I'm also not willing to let it go. Like, I'm very grateful that I feel that and that works for me. It's not for everyone. But I did hear recently people die twice. Once when you lose them, and a second time when you stop saying their name. And for myself and the kids, I'm not going to let that happen. You know, Matt is such a precious part of me and our family. And so I think that is also why it's important for me to keep that spirit alive, but the connection. I've seen a medium a few times, and it's really funny because when I connect with Matt, he'll often laugh. And it's with beautiful Helen Jacobs, who I have so much respect for. And he laughs because he says, well, what's Helen doing here? Like, we talk all the time, Ash. You don't need her. And I just think it's really funny. Everyone's connection in that sort of space is different and unique. And the connection, I feel it regardless, whether it's conversational or just that physical, you almost feel that he's here. So,
do you have a sign with him?
I have a few.
You do?
One of them is the colour yellow.
I thought that might be the case.
Yeah, so it's also and I know we'll talk about it shortly, but just to share quickly around my business called Yellow Falcon, and the reason that's so symbolic. I mean, everyone thinks the colour yellow is just joyful and happy, and of course it is. It's actually the colour that I saw vividly after Matt passed, to the point where I could look around a room and be like, blinded by yellow. And I
almost
thought,
like light.
Yeah, and I thought, like, what is that? There's just so much yellow that I'd never noticed before. I then had this thought, well, it must mean something. Like, it's to the point where it's getting a bit almost silly how much I'm seeing it and how much it is really jolting me. So I checked, and I discovered that it was the solar plexus chakra. Right. And it is all about inner confidence, inner belief. And that is when I had this realization, and I thought, this is Matt telling me you're going to be okay. Believe in yourself, like you've got this. And so this colour yellow was just really prominent, and I went, this is Matt. He's trying to tell me a message. Like, he can't, communicate with me in the same way. So this is his way. So that's why that yellow has become very symbolic. And an element of power, it's sort of having this power and belief in yourself without ego.
Yeah.
And so that's really important to me, to be sort of this powerful yet peaceful. That's been a powerful
beautiful
symbol.
You did say you had a couple of signs.
Yeah, so
symbols.
another one is kookaburras.
Okay.
I don't really know why. Well, I have a theory. Kookaburras are not something you see a lot of. I see them all the time. Like there's been a day where I saw 5 in one day at different locations. I would probably see one once a week.
Wow. I certainly don't see one once a week.
Yeah, I mean, I probably used to see one maybe every year, maybe. I see them a lot, but my other theory is that I actually have a really bad phobia of snakes, like to the point where I've seen a hypnotherapist and, yeah, quite bad. Pre-hypnotherapy, even saying the word snake, I probably would have like had an increased heart rate. So I've done a lot of work on that. But I just think it's really interesting that kookaburras eat snakes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I'm like, isn't
It's
that
a
interesting that
protection.
this symbol, yeah, like Matt is getting rid of my fear. So look,
is.
that's, yeah, I think it's interesting when you think about this connection through mediums or psychics as well, is to say, my view is it real? Yes or no? Does it matter? No. So whether we believe in these signs or symbols, I've always believed if it means something to me, then it means something to me. And others may think differently, and that's totally fine. But yeah, signs and symbols are super interesting, and I've certainly noticed a lot more in recent years. So I guess for me, I just go, that's interesting.
And if it makes you feel better, if it makes you feel connected to him in some way, if it makes you feel supported and guided, you're right. It doesn't matter to anyone else.
Yeah.
I love that you keep his memory alive with the kids. How do you do that? What are some special ways that you do that with the kids?
Yeah, so it's important to me that they, first and foremost, know how much he loves them. And so it's important that, therefore, when I, say goodnight to them, or even multiple times through the day, I always say, Mummy and Daddy love you. I'm also probably unable to say just Mummy loves you. That doesn't feel right. I am sort of now Matt's voice. So that's my number one thing for the kids, is to make sure that they always feel that love. But honestly, it's just talking about him. I have the stories. They don't get to hear his voice. They don't get to, have his cuddles. It's important to me then to share the stories, show them videos, and just allow them to then have that bond with him that way. And yeah, talking about him and just simple things, nothing extravagant, but just, they might be doing something and I'll say, oh, Daddy really loved that. Or, sharing a memory. And now they're at an age where, they're 4.5 now, and they've started requesting music because they're like, oh, Daddy loves this song. And so they'll now ask for it unprompted, which is really sweet. So whereas previously I was just playing that music and sharing it with them, they now actually ask for it, which, is really sweet.
You're an amazing mum. You really are. A friend of mine lost her husband 7 years ago, and we were recently overseas, and they were there with us for a portion of our trip. And she was also just as incredible at keeping her late husband's memory alive with her 3 kids. And it was so beautiful watching her create little rituals while they were there. He wanted to go to Italy as well, and they'd discussed it before he passed, and she made sure that they went to the places that he wanted to go, and she bought a locket and put it in the places that he wanted to be at and experience. And it was just so beautiful to witness them having these moments together as a family, whether he was there physically or not.
I think it's really beautiful to have those moments, and it does give the kids a connection, because they don't have that, right? And I think for me, it's also about honouring and remembering all of these beautiful memories and sharing the memories. And it's also about bringing him with us on the new memories. So, I now ask the kids, how they want to remember and celebrate him. And, tough because obviously they never met him. However, they have the opportunity to still decide on what that is. And it's not about remaining stuck in the grief, because we carry grief with us. We never lose it. But it's also about being, it's a delicate balance, because grief can be hard, and there's a lot of those days. There's a lot of emotion for the kids as well. They have their own grief. And then we also bring Matt right into the present moment too, of the joy and the fun that we have. So it's both.
I know you recently went on a little holiday, and I saw, a couple of your Instagram stories talking about, how joy and grief can actually happen at the same time. How did you go on this holiday, and how did you balance those two emotions during this time?
Yeah, absolutely. It is such a fine line, and I find at times it was really confronting. Even going on the trip and deciding to go on the trip was hard. So it was a trip with 6 other families that we met through daycare. And so therefore they are with their, mum, dad and kids. And so even just to choose to go on that holiday took a lot of courage for me to say yes. But I said yes knowing, firstly, if it was too much, I just cancel or I come home, right? So we can still choose to show up, and it's okay if it gets too hard. So taking that first leap of faith was important to me, and it was also a moment of, I can do this. I also knew that it would bring a lot of joy. It's absolutely confronting, and I did share that to see other, dads with their kids, building sandcastles, pulling each other on the boogie boards, that is hard to see. It also was really lovely because they made sure that our kids were included and part of it. But for me to see it, the kids are often sort of blissfully unaware. So they certainly have moments, and as they're getting older, they do ask questions, and they're definitely noticing that they're, different to their friends, and every family is different. But they're noticing what their difference is. So we definitely have some tough conversations. They often tell me that they miss Daddy. But yeah, this holiday was interesting. Also from just a solo parent. I mean, there's the parent-child relationship that I see, but then also being on my own with 3 kids, I don't get to tag team parenting. I don't get to go and have a rest. I do it all. I'm not a particularly adventurous type of person. I'm really great at sitting on the side of the pool. I didn't love being in the pool, catching the kids down the water slide and getting completely drenched. But I do it because that brings them joy, which then brings me joy too. So I would have much preferred to sit on the side of the pool with the mums and have a chat, but I'm in the thick of it. And of course, it's the dads, right, that are at the bottom of the water slide. So it sort of does just highlight the reality at times. But honestly, as hard as it was, and as, yes, I did have tears behind closed doors of just the realisation of it all, mainly because I knew how much Matt would have loved to have been there and how much I would have loved to share it with him and our kids. So there is that element of the grief of what we don't have. We were with this beautiful village who, just adore the kids and I. And so we got to be surrounded by that love. We got to have the fun, which also wouldn't have really been possible just on my own. Just to have the extra set of hands, cook dinner while I sort the kids out. So it was there as well. So yes, there were tough moments, but above all, there was so much joy, and it was still so much more worth going. And I'm so glad that I had the courage to do that. It doesn't mean it was easy, but we did it, and we just created some new core memories. And so that's really, that really wholesome experience, and to go, yeah, we did it. And that's a little milestone for us. We go, we can do hard things. So really grateful that we got to experience that with our friends.
Ashleigh, what have you learnt about yourself in the last 5 years, do you think?
I have learnt that I am a lot more resilient than I ever imagined. And that even when it's hard physically, mentally or emotionally, I can give it a crack. But I've also learnt when it's too hard and when I need to put my hand up and say, I'm not okay. Or, I said yes and I got to a point, and that's actually taking it too far. So I've really learnt those probably boundaries for myself as well. And I've known when to challenge myself and be courageous. And then I've known when to say, actually, I just need a minute. I'm tapping out of this opportunity, or I just need a rest day, or I need an additional session with my psychologist, I need help. So that's been a real learning for me.
How do you ask for help? I know you just mentioned you have a psychologist and you speak to them.
Yeah.
How else do you ask for help?
Do you know what? I think the first thing before that is I tell myself I'm struggling, and I say that with a lot of compassion. That's okay. Like, look at what you've been through. Like, of course you need help. You know, no one is expected to raise triplets on their own. So I've learned to show a lot more compassion to myself. So really make sure that I do that first. And I also try and acknowledge, am I just feeling a bit overwhelmed, which is also fine, or do I actually need help? So I just try and monitor the emotion first and do some sort of just regulating before I sort of hit panic stations. And then I go, okay, well, what help do I need? Is it an additional psychology session where I can just have that session and just talk it out? Or do I need some meals to just take off some load at home? Like, what does the help look like? Because often there are plenty of ways to get help, but asking for help and then accepting the help are two very different things. And I never realised that until recent years. So I think it's also about what do I need in the home as well that's going to be helpful without compromising. So sometimes I've felt that asking for help and having someone in the home helping with the kids, as great as it is, can actually feel suffocating, and that I'm either not capable, or I sort of get this, I don't know, sort of this state of I'm not coping. I've had to ask for help because I'm not doing okay, and that can actually make the spiral a bit worse. So I've had to really learn what is actually helpful for me right now, and that changes.
That makes complete sense, absolutely, because you have your comforts at home, and then when there's an extra person around, you have to react differently or move differently, and it does. It changes the energy in the home.
Yeah.
I love to ask people this question because life is full of different experiences, and there's joys, as we mentioned, and there's dark times, as we mentioned. But how do you view the world now? Now that you've been through what you've been through, do you think you view the world differently to you did before?
Absolutely. I definitely went through a phase of, really questioning it, going, how, we just found out we were pregnant. Like, how do we go from cloud 9 to, widow, solo mum? So there's definitely that element where you go, how do I trust the universe now? Because you've just taken so much from me. To a state of truly I know how precious life is. And I know, not just due to loss, but even just the little moments with the kids now, and how fortunate we are. So I really hold that, with a lot more care, to really nurture the life that I have. But I've also made the choice to work through those tough times. And I've chosen to do psychology. I've chosen to see a psychic medium. I've made these choices because I saw the benefit on the other side. So really, I could stay at home, keep doing my, 9 to 5 job, and just do that, manage the kids. But that to me is not living a joyful life. It's not living a purposeful life. And I knew that I needed to face the trauma, and it's still a work in progress. But I knew that if I did that, it's not pretty. And the psychology sessions aren't great. I don't walk into a session going, yes, can't wait to do this session. But I go in there knowing that this will be hard. And the person walking out of that session will feel lighter. So I do it for that. So I continue to show up knowing that there is still sort of a greater life to live and greater joy to come. And so I want to show that to the kids that, we have been through tough times and we're not defined by it. We don't need to just sit at home and wallow in the grief and stay there. And instead, we can bring, my husband, we can bring daddy with us into the joy, and we can create joy together. So that's been really important to me, to do the hard work and continue to do the hard work, knowing that there is so much joy to be had.
And I think it's part of the legacy you're leaving behind as well, It's beautiful to see that you are now sitting in the seat where you can help other people, and you've chosen to do that through Yellow Falcon, which is your company. Tell me a little bit about how that helps people in their darkest days and why you started it.
I really got to a point of thinking like, this can't be it. This can't be, widowhood is so isolating. I became a widow at 29 years old. It's not meant to happen. It's not the norm. And it was incredibly isolating, incredibly overwhelming. And I knew that I had gone through this experience of, doing the admin and then, kind of finding myself again. And like I said, that was through various forms of that work. But I then got to a point where I went, I don't want anyone else to do that alone. Like, I've had to do this alone and I've had to figure it out. And so Yellow Falcon was founded to really fill that gap, because a lot of grief support is that very traditional grief support, and it's, counselling services and very emotional support. And that comes later. Like, the practical is what's missing, and there isn't any one place for that. And so I did a bit of research myself, and I went, it doesn't exist. And when I say that the admin, I really mean the death admin, because ultimately what happened in my experience was very aligned to the common experience, where you lose a loved one, you're planning their funeral service, and so really that funeral director is kind of your main touch point. Usually about 2 weeks, you then have the funeral service. Often a lot of loved ones attend and they tell you, we're here for you, we're going to help you. And that's lovely. And then the funeral happens. And then everyone goes back to their families. Everyone goes back to their work. And the funeral director, they're back at work too, and they're not your contact anymore. And you're left. And that's when the admin really starts. And so then I was up at, 2 a.m. at night. I'm Googling, well, what do I do now? And I'm trying to figure out, there's, government agencies, like utility companies, like all of this stuff that needs to happen. You're cancelling things, you're changing names. I don't even know where to start. I don't know what I'm meant to do. And what I also realised is there's a certain order that some things need to be done in. I remember the funeral director handing me 20 certified copies of the death certificate. And I said to her, well, what do I need that for? And she said, you'll need all of those. And little did I know the death admin that I was about to endure. And ultimately a lot of that is really private. Like, I can't ask someone to help and do it. Like, I have to do it. It's me and it's my accounts, etc. So, like I said, that doesn't exist. So what I wanted to make sure was that there is one central place. And so what I started with was firstly like a checklist. And I went back and I looked at my spreadsheet. So my experience as a project manager created this ultimate spreadsheet, and that was also a coping strategy to do that spreadsheet at the time. But it helped me track everything that I needed to do, who I was calling, etc. And so I've basically used that to create this checklist. And I did actually send it then to a funeral director as well as a grief and trauma specialist, because I said, if I'm going to provide this resource, it needs to be correct. I would never want to put something out. And so I asked them to take a look at it. And between the two of them, they came back and they said, we've got one dot point to add. And I had this moment of not knowing if I was proud or devastated that it was correct. And that's when I actually had a really big moment. I went, oh my God, I did this all by myself. And it was at that moment that I realised this can really be helpful to people. And so I'm really proud of it. And I know it works because I've done it. So it is a resource just built off the reality of it. And so, I'm proud to have created that to support widows, because it just doesn't exist.
And I think your amazing organisational skills have really played into that. And obviously it's going to be a huge resource for people who are navigating what you've navigated or similar. Now my podcast is called Things You Can't Unhear, and I want to ask this question based around the time when something was helpful for you. What was something that you heard during this time that you were deeply struggling, that you heard that really made a difference for you?
I can't remember who said it to me, but it was, no is a complete sentence. So even in this time of feeling so overwhelmed and deep in grief, I still felt the people pleaser coming out in me. I was trying to cater to everyone else. I was trying to keep the peace. And someone said to me, no is a complete sentence. And that gave me permission that I didn't have to justify everything all the time. And look, I think an element of that was coping strategy for me. However, it was really helpful to hear, I can just say no.
And feel fine about it. Feel good about it.
And that took time. Saying no, I then still felt uncomfortable and the awkward silence. But so that was a learning for me too, to get to that point.
If there's someone listening now in their darkest time, man, woman, anyone, what would you whisper in their ear to keep them going?
No, it sounds really cliche, and particularly if they're experiencing a loss, but I would say you're not alone. I discovered that there was community out there of people who do understand, and I'm now really proud to obviously create that as well through Yellow Falcon, but to reach out in your time, but to have the courage to say I'm not okay can be really powerful.
What are you looking forward to in life, Ashleigh?
I'm looking forward to seeing my kids grow up. I'm looking forward to having happy and healthy kids and that really, beautiful family life.
You are on a bit of a mission to share this, and I know why, because it's so important. So many people are feeling what you felt and still feel. Tell me about what the next sort of year looks like for you, because when you came in today, you said, I've got your podcast, and then I'm on the Mamma Mia podcast, and then I'm on Georgia Loves podcast, and I know you've been on all of these other platforms already. This is exciting. It's because it's needed. Tell me a little bit about how that feels for you.
It feels surreal, first and foremost, because I think as well it's unlike, perhaps promoting a business that's a product or a service. It's like, this is my life and it's deeply personal. I'm really delicate in, because this is my life and it's our kids' lives, etc. And it's Matt as well. So it's important to me to really honour, I guess, and protect how fragile life is. So sharing that. But I never want any widow, especially, but anyone to feel what I felt. And I had some incredibly dark days, and I know how isolating it is. And if there is one listener who hears one sentence, and I never say this from a place of arrogance, but I know that one sentence can be life-changing for someone who really needs it. And it might just spark another idea, or it might just give them an inspiration to go, okay, if she can do it, I can too. Whatever that is, there's part of me that often thinks, who am I to share my story? And then who am I not to? And it doesn't come easily. As much as I can talk and appear confident, like I said, this is my life. And if I had had that person, if I had had that community, if I had had that resource, it would have given me so much more hope during that dark time. And so I do it for the widows out there. I do it for those that are experiencing. But most importantly, I do it for our family, because we're not defined by the loss. We're not defined by the tragedy. It is a part of our story and it is a chapter. But we've still got the pen and we're still writing the book. There are so many blank pages. And so it's the opportunity to really own the story, to know what values are important to us, and then to write those next chapters as well.
That's the whole reason why I started this podcast and why I called it Things You Can't Unhear, because we can be inspired, we can grow, we can learn by other people's darkness and grief and hard times. We can hear stories like this, and someone might be listening and not facing the exact same experiences that you have or ever will, but they can hear this story and say, you know what, I'm actually going to live a little differently now. I'm going to go home and I'm going to be more grateful for my family around me. I'm going to act a little differently. I'm going to think a little differently. I may even see the world a little differently now because there's people who have experienced things. And I talk about this a lot. We can learn through pain, or we can learn and grow through inspiration. And you are really, truly providing inspiration through sharing your story. And I know it's hard. I've nearly broken down 4 or 5 times listening to you talk. And I know it must be so difficult for you to talk about this today. 3 times you're going to be speaking about this. But thank you on behalf of everyone whose life you change, putting yourself out there, reliving these dark times and these hard emotions that you've had to do for everyone else.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Thank you, Ashleigh Conwell, for joining me on the Things You Can't Unhear podcast.
Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favourite listening platform.